Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. Alright, so on this is going to be a short episode of what I talk about when I talk about dungeon diving, and it's called Empty Tombs. What if I go on an adventure and I don't find anything? So this topic was actually brought up way back when I did my very first playthrough of Darklight Memento Mori. Somebody commented on how in the first couple of videos, basically nothing happened. I wasn't discovering anything in the tomb. And that sentiment was echoed on, I believe, on one of my Warhammer Quest videos. And it has again been echoed most recently on the first part of my Let's Play with Advanced Hero Quest. And so that is something that does come up on games where the dungeons are randomly generated and populated. When anything can happen, sometimes that anything is nothing. And this does tend to happen more frequently in games that are older, that have an older design, or games that are based off of games with an older design aesthetic, like Darklight is, because it is very much a Warhammer Quest derivative. Games where things are just generated randomly by rolling dice or picking through cards, things that you can't augment with your own ability to change the outcome. You are at the mercy of the dice, especially in Advanced Hero Quest. And there can be times in games like this where you are going from corridor to corridor, from room to room, and you aren't finding anything. Somebody mentioned on my video, and what prompted this discussion, somebody just mentioned on my last video for Advanced Hero Quest how they would be disappointed if they took the time to learn a game, to get it out, to set it up. Maybe if they took the money to buy it, did all that, started playing it, and an hour into the game they hadn't found any treasure or monsters. Nothing had happened. They would feel a little disappointed, maybe a little bored. And while I do completely understand that sentiment, and I totally think it is a valid complaint to register at these kinds of games, it is not one that I share. And so I just wanted to talk just a little bit about that. I get it, I really do. But I would argue against saying that nothing is happening. Because in these kinds of games, the nothing happening is something. The moving through the dungeon, exploring the dungeon, physically creating the dungeon with the tiles, that is the thing that is happening. And that is one thing that I like in these games. I like to see how an unscripted dungeon folds out, how it appears on the table. Because often I feel like unscripted dungeons, they can, not always, but they can end up looking, in my opinion, much cooler, more evocative than scripted dungeons. What I like to do is, for me, the uneventful journey is in itself a rewarding aspect of the game. That's part of the adventure. I don't clamor for realism in my games. I am definitely in the Warren Spector side of things when it comes to realism versus fun. Fun should always win. However, in these kinds of games, sometimes a little bit of realism is good, and I would imagine that if there really were adventurers going through dungeons, or there are, I mean, there are archaeologists, digging up tombs and ancient places, right? Sometimes they find nothing. Sometimes you come up zero. And I would imagine in a fantasy world, in a fantasy setting, my party of heroes, my adventuring, questing heroes, they are not the first people to be discovering these dungeons. These dungeons have been around for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. And maybe the party that went in just before them found that last piece of treasure. Maybe some roaming monster, some rat triggered that last trap. Maybe the people who built the dungeon didn't include any secret doors. Maybe they didn't have that technology, right? So there is a element of realism when a dungeon is empty that I do enjoy. And I think that's part of the exploration. I like to imagine the halls are empty and desolate, right? The empty ruins and rooms and layers. They've been picked over for hundreds of years by other adventuring parties and inhabitants. The treasures have all been cleaned out, and all that's left are dusty cobwebs and carcasses and mummified bodies and empty tombs with the lids spilled over and the remnants of an old civilization. Now, granted, you're not like seeing that. It's not like being written in evocative prose or flowery prose or something, but that kind of embellishment is going on inside my head. Right now on Roll20, we're playing a very old D&D module called the Hidden Shrines of Tamaokan. And it's for first edition D&D. We're playing 5e, but it was written in 1979, and it's considered a classic. And my buddy Matt, he's the DM, he refers to this as boomer D&D because it's old. It is. It's like the first D&D. These guys were a generation before me playing Dungeons and Dragons, and their modules were very different. This module, it's a pure dungeon crawl that we're going through, and it's a lot of empty rooms and halls upon halls upon empty halls. And Matt, if he's rolling on those random encounter charts and nothing is hitting, that's what we're experiencing. We're going from hall to hall, from room to room, and it's quiet. And I like that quietness. I like that idea of things being dull. I do feel like, there are modern game design in these kinds of games. It is more concerned, I think, with creating a series of set pieces. You want one exciting moment after another to create maximum excitement for the players. And I get that. That is fun too. I do enjoy that. But I also, at the same time, when everything is exciting, nothing is exciting, right? I mean, with everything amped up to 11, there's no valley. There's no, it's all peak. And so sometimes I like to have quietness. Though I've mentioned, my love for the Dark Souls video games before, and Demon Souls and Bloodborne and all those games. And one of the things I really appreciate about them is they're not afraid to have vast stretches of nothing going on. I mean, in Dark Souls, Anor Londo, a lot of Anor Londo, which is this great level, is empty. You're walking around and there's nothing there. Now, that could be a limitation of the technology, but I don't think it is. I think it's a choice to create an empty city, and it gives that sense of vastness and that sense of you are coming into a ancient world that has already been lived in, and you are just experiencing the vestiges of this this old civilization, and there's really not much else around. And I get that very strongly, I get that sense with Advanced Hero Quest. Now, it would be nice, I admit, that playing through a game like Advanced Hero Quest where nothing seems to be happening does not make for the most interesting viewing, especially if I, as the presenter, am not embellishing upon, some reliefs on the walls or some mosaics or something. I'm not doing that. Maybe I'm imagining that kind of stuff in my head. I am not a great prose writer, so I'm not one to create like flowery or purple prose on the spot. If I was better at that, maybe then I could do that a little more in this gameplay. I could translate what I'm picturing in my imagination verbally for people. But I do get it that it's not maybe the most exciting thing to watch. Some people like it, some people don't. I just wanted to explain, give some reasons why I do like it. I enjoy just creating the dungeon on the table. I enjoy rolling the dice and seeing what fate has in store, of keeping things as much out of my control as possible. I enjoy seeing how things fold out that aren't scripted. The exact opposite kind of game would be something like Sword and Sorcery, which was mentioned in these comments on YouTube, where I feel like that game is way too scripted. Same as Madara. To me, those games feel like every single beat is scripted. You're not really having any kind of strong random encounters. You are hitting certain beats that the creators want you to hit. A game that I think does a good job of straddling the lines between those two, and it's of course the game I talk about the most, my favorite game, Secrets of the Lost Tomb, which does have that ability to create quietness and randomness where nothing is happening, offset by the scripted beats that you are guaranteed to hit in the scenario. You compare that very directly with Secrets of the Lost Station, which you guys know how I feel about that. Didn't like it. I thought, it's just, yeah, you can watch my video on that. Don't like that game at all. It is like the exact opposite of Lost Tomb, where it is super scripted, like Sword and Sorcery. So I don't feel like I am really adventuring in those games. I feel like I am following a pre-written path by somebody. Now, sometimes those are fine, and a lot of people really like those, and I get it. I get that it's exciting to have really cool and bespoke, unique set pieces, and I do like those sometimes. However, given the choice, I want more of something that is in a game like Advanced Hero Quest or Warhammer Quest, where it's kind of out of my control and I'm not just connecting the dots that somebody has already written. So that's it. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. I want to thank you to the viewer for leaving that comment that sparked this conversation. It's always nice when I can react to something that's going on the channel, and not just make up my topic on the fly. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope you are enjoying your day and staying safe and healthy, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.